Welcome to our session today on faster decisions, stronger teams, and better results. My name is Renee Banks, and I am in the HR organization at Amazon, which we call PXT, People Experience and Technology. I have the great pleasure of leading HR for the Global Selling Partner Services organization, and I'm really excited to be here today with all of you with my colleague, Drew Howell.
Thanks, Renee. My name is Drew Howell. I work with Renee very closely in Selling Partner Services, and I'm too part of the HR organization. I've been at Amazon for 3.5 years, and I've supported many leaders within the organization. Right now, one of my main clients is the FBA organization, so I've got a lot of knowledge as it comes to how we operationalize all of the leadership principles at Amazon. So today we're going to talk about faster decisions, stronger teams, and better results. There we go. And today we're going to cover the Amazon approach to decision making, practice distinguishing door decisions, and empowering your teams.
Okay, so let's get into Amazon's approach to decision making. So I think a lot of you are probably here because people like to sort of get a peek behind the curtain of what it's really like to work at Amazon and how we kind of make decisions, how we get work done. So this is a bit of a cultural session as well, talking about, again, how work gets done and how decisions get made. Being able to make high velocity decisions is super important. It's important for us at Amazon. I'm sure it's important for all of you because you're trying to drive your business forward and move as quickly as possible. So again, for us at Amazon, this is kind of a core tenet about how we work and how we make decisions. So some of the key elements of high velocity decision making are recognizing one-way versus two-way doors. One-way doors being those that are very hard to walk back through. Two-way doors where you can kind of make a different decision and kind of quickly pivot. Being able to make those two-way door decisions with limited information. Often we like to have a ton of information before we make a call, and that's not always necessary, so we'll talk through that. Taking risks when the downside is manageable, that's another aspect of this. Being able to disagree and commit, another very Amazonian principle. And then escalating when it's necessary. I think oftentimes people think of escalations as sort of a negative thing. At Amazon, we see it as something really positive because it helps us move forward, get the right voices at the table, and get things moving. So what we find is that applying these concepts really helps us avoid that analysis paralysis. We have a ton of data that we're working with all the time. We make a lot of data available to all of you. We all love data, but it can be easy to get mired in that. And so we'll talk through some ways that we can sort of avoid that to get towards that high velocity decision making. So we still take a lot of inspiration from Jeff B. This is a quote that we talk about a lot. Most decisions can be made with about 70% of the information. This is really difficult for people to do because we love to be right a lot, another leadership principle. We love to really be confident in what we're doing, but we've really found over and over and over again that having about 70% of the information is good enough to make really good decisions. So we just encourage you to kind of keep this in mind. One thing that we want you to do is take some of these concepts and be able to take them back and put them in your own toolkits to drive your own business and start to influence the culture at your companies and for your businesses to help move faster and drive results. So one-way versus two-way door decisions. I mentioned this already. What does that mean exactly? So one-way door decisions are kind of irreversible. So launching a new product line is an example. This is something that requires a ton of analysis. Probably there isn't just one single decision maker on this. Probably a lot of people have to get involved in this. It has pricing decisions. It has inventory decisions, all of these pieces that connect to it that would be really hard or tricky to undo. Two-way door decisions, on the other hand, pretty easy to undo. They're reversible. They are able to be made by individuals. We'll talk later about empowerment, but Another sort of key concept here with decision making is to kind of spread that out and not feel like one person or one small team always has to be the one making decisions. So two-way door decisions are often distributed among multiple people. So trying a new marketing tactic for 2 weeks. This is something that's fairly easy to undo, to change, to make a different decision about. So this one-way door, two-way door decision framework is something that we talk about a lot, probably every week. It's something that, we're always making trade-offs. We're always making a million decisions every single day. So being able to make that distinction and putting it in this language and framework we find is really helpful.
Okay, so I'm going to take us through some scenarios and examples to really get into and double click on one-way and two-way door decisions. So the first scenario is you're considering adding a completely new product category to your Amazon store. This will require significant investment in inventory, new supplier relationships, and marketing materials. This is obviously a one-way door. Renee just mentioned that in the previous slide. When you think about the risks of getting it wrong, there's financial loss that would happen if you got it wrong. You've got to think through the damage to your brand and reputation, and the diversion of resources when you move from one product to another. What's the cost of delay? Missing opportunities and seasonal windows, allowing competitors to establish themselves in different categories, and the lost potential revenue during the delay. Renee?
Yeah, another scenario here. You're thinking about implementing a 15% price increase across your entire product catalog to improve your profit margins. What do we think? One-way door, two-way door? Varying answers here. Okay, we think of this as a two-way door decision because even though it does have implications, it's something that can be undone without sort of undue heartache, I would say. There are definitely risks, and this one-way, two-way door framework is about knowing when to take those calculated risks. So a risk might be that sales might drop if customers reject the higher price. There could be damage to customer loyalty or people who make repeat purchases for your products. Inventory stagnation, that's a risk if your prices go up. On the other hand, delaying a decision like this could have you operating at suboptimal profit margins, or could mean missed revenue that could fund other business growth for you. Cash flow constraints might be a problem. Not implementing this could impact that as well. So again, there are always trade-offs, and it's really just about examining, is this reversible? How painful would it be? How difficult would it be? And how can I use this framework to help me make those decisions? Drew, another example?
Yeah, you're considering a complete rebrand of your Amazon store, including new logo, product packaging, and brand messaging to target a more premium segment. Hands up for one-way door. Hands up for two-way door. Okay, we've got some one-way doors and two-way doors as well. It is indeed a one-way door decision. When you think about the risks of getting it wrong, you could potentially alienate your current customer base when you're trying to attract a new customer base. There's significant costs sunk in packaging, marketing, photography, etc. And there's confusion about, or potential confusion around your brand identity. When you think about the cost of the delay, I should say, continued competition in a potentially saturated market segment, missing the opportunity to capture high margins in the premium segment potentially, and allowing competitors to establish premium alternatives to your products. So as Renee and I have both been going over with you, there's always this kind of judgment call that you need to make, and you have to work through that. But figuring out whether it's a reversible decision or one that you can easily navigate is really important as you sort of think about the problems that you solve and the decisions you have to make.
All right, now we're going to talk a little bit about empowering teams. I talked about this earlier. So traditionally, we think of teams as people who work for us, are in our reporting line, that kind of thing. But we also understand that for sellers, your teams might include suppliers, they might include vendors. So we really want you to think big about what your team sort of includes. Because for us, what we find is that taking partners or sharing decision making can often help with moving things along more quickly also. I'm going to talk about some Amazon leadership principles that really relate closely to this notion of high velocity decision making. Who is familiar with Amazon leadership principles or has heard about Amazon leadership principles? So I see some hands out there. Okay, good. So like this high velocity decision making framework, this one-way, two-way door framework that we're talking about here, we talk about leadership principles sort of day in and day out at Amazon. They really are the things that guide our work. They are the things that help us make decisions. They help us break ties. They help us decide when to promote people. They really are embedded in everything that we do. And because we see this session here as a bit of a cultural immersion into Amazon, we thought it would be useful to talk through some of the leadership principles that relate to high velocity decision making. So the first one is ownership. So we define ownership as leaders are owners. They think long-term and don't sacrifice long-term value for short-term results. They act on behalf of the entire company, beyond just their own team, and they never say, "That's not my job." So in the context of decision-making, ownership is super important because people like to be owners. They like to feel like they have a stake in the way that the company is run, the team is run, those types of things. So what might that look like for you running your business? Maybe giving certain team members responsibility for a defined set of things, whether that's product lines, inventory management, maybe it's pricing, or encouraging employees to solve customer pain points on their own. So just thinking about where do you need to be involved in every single decision, or where can you kind of share that ownership with someone else on the team? Another leadership principle, and we talked about it earlier, bias for action, just moving quickly. So we define that as speed matters in business. Many decisions and actions are reversible and do not need extensive study. We value taking calculated risks. So that's how we think about bias for action at Amazon. So how might that show up for you? Creating a test and learn culture, allowing people to experiment, again, maybe on lower stakes decisions, and allowing people to initiate sort of limited time experiments. So whether that's a promotion, whether that's a product, that can show up in a lot of different ways. But having that bias for action is really important to keep things moving along. Another one is deliver results. This is, I would say, among the most important leadership principles at Amazon. We define that as leaders focusing on the key inputs for their business and delivering them with the right quality and in a timely fashion. Despite setbacks, they rise to the occasion and never settle. So what does that look like in the context of decision making? Setting clear goals. That way people know what the parameters are to make the decisions. Setting up dashboards, helping people see real-time performance. Also, establishing a recognition system. If you want to incent certain behaviors, set up a recognition system so that people feel recognized for the good work that they're doing and the decisions that they're making. Another one is that we think really relevant here is earn trust. So earn trust really ties back to that ownership leadership principle. It's about allowing people to have an equal voice and an equal say in certain decisions. Right. And again, when those are two-way door decisions, it can be pretty easy to ask any partner or employee or anyone that you work with to get involved in the ownership of the company. That's a great way to earn trust. And how that might show up is sharing your own thinking as well, being transparent about how you make decisions. At Amazon, we talk a lot about being vocally self-critical. We're not perfect, we know that, no one is. And so being willing to talk about making mistakes or decisions that even you made that had to be reversed, I think can go a long way towards earning trust.
Yeah, Renee, it's really about the culture, I think. When we think about earning trust, the culture that you create to enable people to make mistakes, to learn from those mistakes, and for you all to get better at what you do day in, day out. I think it's a really important point.
Yeah. Finally, encouraging decision-making at the right level. Again, super important. You have a lot of latitude about what types of decisions you'll delegate, the autonomy that you'll give to people or that you won't give to people. And so again, just using this framework to help you think about how and when to do that can be really helpful.
Great. So I'm going to take you again through some scenarios, or maybe just to consider some decisions that you might delegate versus things that you may not want to delegate. And again, it ties really nicely into the one-way door, two-way door decision-making framework that we just discussed. So when we think about what you would delegate, they're usually two-way door decisions. They're usually things like day-to-day operations, decisions that can be easily changed, product feature prioritization within established guidelines, and team improvements, process improvements, workflow improvements, potentially depending on the size and scale of your organization, and resource allocations within predefined budgets or parameters again. Then when you think through, more of the decisions you wouldn't delegate, things like team structure and culture, those things you want to stay really close to. They're the things that really kind of make the business go, for a lack of a better term. Brand integrity, so you're talking about the perception of your brand, critical partnerships, things that really matter to the success of your organization. Things like crisis management, where reputational risks could be common. And then financial decisions, so you're talking about real business stability decisions. So these are the really big things that really matter to you as a business owner and for your organization's success. Renee, maybe you want to take us through the benefits of shared decision making?
Yeah.
You touched on it a little bit already.
Moving right along here.
Yeah, no, that's awesome.
So we've talked about a lot of this already, right? And again, I think these concepts are not so novel and unique in and of themselves, but again, we think that having this framework and some of this language to put into your own toolkits can be super helpful as you're running your business, as you're going back and talking about some of the concepts that you learned. And again, to kind of give you a peek into how we get work done every day at Amazon. So some of the benefits of shared decision making are faster execution, just simply being able to go at a faster clip. Higher ownership, we've talked about that a lot. And that really does go a long way. I mean, whether you work in a small company or a large company, and I think Drew and I have done both,
Yeah.
giving people autonomy, letting people make decisions, that is something that is sort of priceless in terms of building a company culture where people feel really invested in the success of the company. And those can be in big and small ways.
Sure.
So we would say just do not underestimate that ownership piece. Improve morale and team trust. This ties directly to what I was just talking about. I think when people feel like I'm in it, I have a purpose here, I have a stake in the success of this place or the success of the culture of this place, that goes a long way towards loyalty, towards really better outcomes in every regard. And removing bottlenecks. We did a couple roundtable sessions earlier and I think maybe some of you were there. It was so interesting and helpful for us to hear from sellers directly. And one thing that we heard, I think, over and over again is many of you are owners, right? Many of you are at the top of the company. And so we get that you feel that responsibility to make every decision, to make every call, to have 95% of the information. And we have just seen over and over again that when you say 70% is good enough, really great decisions can be made. I think Amazon, good example of a company that's doing pretty well. And so this is how, we kind of run it here. And taking yourself out of that bottleneck position goes a long way also with helping things move faster, helping people feel like owners. So we just encourage you to kind of challenge yourself to recognize those two-way door decisions so that you can share that responsibility.
Yeah, one of the adds that I'd make there, just on the roundtables that we had earlier this morning, when you're thinking about your organization, thinking about the decisions you can delegate, it can be pretty uncomfortable. There are moments where you go, I don't really know if I want to do this. Like, I'm not really sure if I feel comfortable in doing this. But encouraging a culture of giving the decision making to someone, single-threaded owner, owning that decision and really running with it. If mistakes are made, if they're not huge mistakes, you're going to be able to course correct and keep going. faster and better as you continue moving forward. So I think, Renee, I'm going to take everyone through some of the key takeaways before we jump into a Q&A.
Yeah.
So when you leave this room today, the things that we want you to remember are, don't treat every decision as a high-stakes gamble. Not every decision is a one-way door decision. It might feel like that. Really testing yourself as you're thinking through, is this a two-way or one-way door, will help you move faster and make decisions faster. Again, move fast on reversible ideas, test, learn, iterate. This is something we do often at Amazon. It's been, I'd say, a key to some of our success, and we do it every day. You know, even in small ways within our organization, we actually like learning from our mistakes. It's something that we get, you know, satisfaction out of doing. And I encourage you all to think about that as you leave the room today. Empowering your team to act confidently within their scope. And finally, you know, this mindset helps you scale your Amazon business more effectively. As we've been discussing throughout this session, it's really something that is freeing for a lot of people once they kind of understand the process and how to actually do it effectively. Have a great day.